Can you please state your name for the record and make sure you speak in the microphone?
Donna Adelson.
Call earlier.
Deep breaths by Donna.
Call Donna Adelson.
Please come up to the witness stand, Ms. Adelson.
There's Donna Adelson, the Jewish godmother. She ordered the hit of her son-in-law when her daughter was going through a divorce with him. She organized the hit with her dentist son, Charlie, who's serving life in prison after being convicted. While on the phone with Charlie in the jail cell that she's staying at right now, she thought she hung up the phone with him. And while she didn't think she was being recorded, you can hear her plotting to leave the country with her husband to Vietnam, which she thought doesn't have any type of extradition with the United States. Now her attorneys are trying to suppress that call based upon the fact that she didn't give consent to that recording. Let's see what happens.
Witness stand. Yeah. Please raise your right hand as best as you can. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be
It's a big change from the shoes she's used to wearing.
the truth? Yes. You may take the seat. Please speak loudly and clearly. You may examine Mr. Zellman when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a moment.
Deep breaths by Donna, and look at the hair. If you look at the very end here, you can see the remnants of her dye job, but unfortunately her grays have now taken root and she doesn't have access to hair dye in prison, obviously.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you please state your name for the record and make sure you speak in the microphone?
Yes, Donna Adelson.
Now, I want to direct your attention, we heard the call earlier.
Deep breaths by Donna.
The call on November 7th of 2023 at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and for the record, that was call number 561. Do you remember where you were?
Yes, I was in my apartment, in my living room.
Do you remember who was present when you got the call?
Yes, my husband, Harvey, and friends of mine, my attorney, Susan Brotman, and her husband, Richard Chagrin.
You can guarantee that she prepared to let the court know that her attorney was there. Perhaps they can get some form of attorney-client privilege in, which you normally wouldn't have, obviously, if the attorney wasn't there.
Your attorney, what kind of law does Ms. Brotman practice? Or did she?
She does estate planning.
Was Ms. Brotman present at your apartment for the purposes of providing you with legal counsel?
And that's important too, because only conversations relating to legal representation would be potentially protected. That's not necessarily going to be the case here, but let's see what our answer is going to be.
Yes, she was.
There you go.
And you remember receiving the call from Charlie?
Yes, of course.
And where was Charlie at the time?
So he was in a room by himself. It was after the conviction.
Was he in the jail?
He was in jail.
Okay. What did you do when you saw that Charlie was calling?
Answered the phone.
And you heard the recording that we played earlier?
Yes.
And you agreed for your call with your son to be recorded, correct?
Yes.
As the call was happening, do you know at what point Charlie was no longer on the call?
No, only when because I was talking, and then all of a sudden I asked him something, and I said, "Charlie, do you hear me, Charlie?" And I said it a few times, and he didn't respond anymore. And I knew the call was over.
Now, in the course, during the time that your son was incarcerated in Leon County Jail, did that happen more than, was that a frequent occurrence?
Yeah, it happens. It happens a lot, unfortunately.
Okay. And would there be times when you didn't realize at first that he was no longer on the call?
Yes.
Where in your apartment were you when this happened?
So I was in my living room.
And you heard your voice on that first call when you repeated, "Charlie, Charlie, are you there?"
Right.
Did you believe the call had ended?
Yes.
In times prior to this, what would happen? What would you do when that would happen?
If he didn't respond anymore, that was it. The call was over.
And what would you do with your phone?
I'd hang up.
Those of you with elderly parents know they don't know how to use the phone. Sometimes they think they hang up, sometimes they don't. Here, it's critical because the law will analyze whether one intended to disconnect from the call and then intend to actually give up consent.
With the call on November 8th of 2023, the one at 6:30 in the morning, do you know at what point your son was no longer on the phone?
I don't remember the...
In either one of those situations, or in both of those situations, did you believe the call was over?
Yeah, the call was over. He was gone.
And you went about your business?
Yes.
Now, with
Just so happens she went about her business of trying to flee the country.
respect to the November 7th, 2023 phone call when your attorney, her husband, and your husband were present at your apartment, did you agree for your...
Sigmund Freud has argued that there is no such thing as a mistake, and therefore subconsciously she wanted to be caught.
Your attorney-client conversation to be recorded?
No.
Did you agree for your conversation with your husband to be recorded?
No, of course not.
Now, the following day, did you agree for your subsequent conversation with your husband to be recorded?
No.
Now, you heard the recording. To consent to this call, press 1. Or recording of this call, press 1. Correct?
Correct.
And you hung up the phone after those calls were over.
Thought I did.
Just a moment, Your Honor. Nothing further at this time, Your Honor?
Cross-examination.
Good morning.
So there in the room with you during this call was, you said your, one of your attorneys, Susan Brotman, your husband, and then also Susan Brotman's husband.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And he was not your attorney?
He was not.
Your attorney?
No, he's not an attorney.
Okay. You were informed at the beginning of that call, this is the one on November 7th that recorded you while they were all in the room. You were informed that you were being recorded if you accepted that call?
Yes.
Okay. And that if you do not want to be on that recorded call, that you needed to hang up the call. Is that right?
Are you saying, does the recording say...
Right. If you do not want to accept that recorded call, you should hang up.
If you do not... Yeah, no, I accepted the recorded call.
Okay. You typically do hang up your calls, you said, after
I mean, I think I
your
did.
call.
Let her finish the question, Donna. I went through how poorly Charlie, her son, performed on the stand from a technical standpoint. Charlie answered about 95% of his questions incorrectly from a technical standpoint. That means when they ask you for a yes or no answer, you're only giving a yes or no answer and not offering anything in addition. She needs to be much better trained than Charlie was. Charlie had such a poor performance on the stand from a technical aspect. Here, you don't interrupt the questioner. Let the questioner finish the question. I know it's her first time, but this goes to the attorneys and to the training of Donna.
Charlie Adelson when he was in custody. All right, but this particular call that day, evidently you did not properly hang up, right?
Evidently.
Okay. And have you ever forgotten to press the button on a call before?
I mean, it may have happened. I don't know.
Sure. Has your phone pocket dialed people before?
Has it what?
Pocket dialed people
No way an old broad is going to understand what pocket dial means. We all know the term is butt dial. That she would understand.
before? When you've been out of custody.
Pocket dialed?
Right.
I told you.
I don't know what you mean.
Like if your phone is in your pocket or in your purse and it accidentally calls someone you didn't mean it to?
I mean, it could have happened, sure.
Okay. And you also could have not pressed the button on your cell phone to end a call before, right?
It's possible.
Okay. It's not quite as big of a deal as it used to be when you would actually have to hang up the phone.
Right.
Right. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Redirect examination.
Pretty tame cross-examination, but you don't expect much here.
Briefly, Your Honor. The consent that you gave for the call to be recorded, when did that end?
It ended when Charlie hung up, or when whatever stopped the call. I mean,
That's the huge legal question that we're going to answer. Generally, you can't ask your client to give a legal opinion, but in her mind, when did the consent actually stop? when she forgot to hang up the call or when Charlie hung up the call. That is the legal question the judge is going to have to
I
decide.
don't know how it stopped, but it stopped. When the call was over with Charlie, it was over.
Nothing further.
You may step down.
Looks like Donna's put on about 15 to 20 pounds while she's sitting in Leon County in Florida.
As to the burden up under the precedent established by Smiley versus State, in order to exclude what are complained of wiretapped interceptions, the movement has a need to show there was a subjective expectation of privacy in their statements, and the expectation is one that society would accept as reasonable. As to the subjective expectation showing the defendant has met that burden, it now shifts to the state as to whether this is one that is reasonable. Ms. Dugan?
Yes, sir.
The judge is basically saying that the way the case law reads, first, the person trying to exclude the evidence must show that there was a reasonable expectation of privacy during the call. Then the burden shifts over to the state. So now the state must show that the expectation of privacy was not reasonable given the circumstances involved here. Eventually, the judge heard argument and is going to reserve judgment, meaning he's going to make a decision at a later date. We will be following the Adelson case intensely. I have a Jewish mother-in-law who reminds me a lot of Donna Adelson. While I hope my fate is not the same, I'm studying Miss Adelson, I'm studying this case, and we're going to analyze every aspect of it as it proceeds to trial.